So this is 6th grade lesson 4-5. Now, I guess there's good news and bad news for you guys for this lesson. This lesson, and I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about here in a moment, is it's stuff you've already been taught. They're just a little bit harder. All right, so let me show you what I mean. And that's what this lesson is all about. It's you know how to solve equations when they're addition and when they're subtraction and when you're multiplying and dividing, you're solving for the variables. And we've just been using whole numbers for the most part. But now they're going to throw in fractions and decimals. So the process is the same. So if I wrote something like 2 plus c equals 5, you guys know that. I mean, you know what it is just by looking at it, but the actual process would be that you would get c by itself. So you're going to subtract 2 on each side of the equation. You're left with c equals 3. You guys know how to do that. So you do the opposite. If it's addition, you do subtraction. If it's subtraction, you do addition. And the same thing for multiplication. If I put something like 3x equals 21, most of you could just look at it, you know what it is, but the steps to solve it, to get the x by itself, to isolate it, is to get rid of that 3. Well, what's the opposite? What's happening to the x? It's being multiplied. So you do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So you divide each side by 3. The 3's cancel out. You're left with x equals 7. But what if it was something like this? What if it was 0.5x equals 21? Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with that. Yeah, you do. It's the same thing. What is happening to the x? It's being multiplied by 0.5. So you do the opposite, and you divide each side by 0.5. They cancel out. You're left with x equals. Now, let me ask you a question. Again, some of you just know this, but others may not. What's this equal? 21, right. Well, what if it was 0.5? It's 42, because it goes in twice as much, because that 0.5 is half of 1. So x equals 42, because 21 divided by 0.5 is 42. And if you're not sure how to do that, I could just show you right here. Can you divide with the decimal? No, you got to get rid of that. So where's the decimal in 21? It's right there. So if I move this over, then I've got to move this one over, and I have to add a 0. All right? So the decimal goes straight up. Does 5 go into 2? No. Does 5 go into 21? Yes. How many times? 1 left over. Bring down that 0. How many times does 5 go into 10? Twice. There you go. 42. Look at that. It matches. So these problems are just going to have decimals and fractions. What if I had something like this? 3/7 minus x equals, I don't know. I'm just going to make something up. 1 and 2/3. Okay? Well, what do we need to do? Well, we got to get rid of that 3/7. That's a positive 3/7, right? So how would we get rid of it? Subtract 3/7. Because we're subtracting x here, so we're subtracting 3/7. Whatever you do on one side of the equation, you do on the other, 3/7. So they cancel out, so we're left with the negative x, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But now we have 1 and 2/3, and I'll put it right over here, 1 2/3 subtracting 3/7. What do I need to do that mixed number? What do I have to do with that? Yeah. Yeah, turn it into a fraction. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So it becomes 5 over 3 minus 3/7. Now I can work with that. So I'll just come over here and set it up vertically. Here's 5 over 3, and I'm subtracting 3/7. I need a common denominator. What do you think that would be? What number goes, what will 3 go into and 7 go into evenly? Mr. Karkit? Yeah, 21. So then I say 7 goes into 21 3 times 3 is 9. 3 goes into 21 7 times 5 is 35. Now that I have a common denominator, I can just do the subtraction. And so I'm going to subtract 9 from 35. What is that? Somebody say it. What is it? 26. 26 over 21. That's an improper fraction. The top part is bigger than the bottom. So 21 goes into 26 how many times? 1. So what's left over? So there's the answer. 1 and 5 21st, or 1 and 5 over 21. So let me go back to this here. It was a negative x equals 1 and 5 over 21. Terrible looking 5 there. On occasion, and I'm not sure if there's going to be any in this lesson, or if you even had any, I can't remember. You never want to leave the variable negative. And so you just simply get rid of the negative sign, but if you change that sign, you got to change the sign of the other one. So whatever you do on one side of the equation, you do on the other. So if I make this a positive x, well then this positive is going to have to be a negative 1 and 5 over 21. Now that ended up being a little bit complicated, but some of these you're going to have to work through them like this to figure out what it is. But the way to solve it is the same. It hasn't changed. So let's look on page 210 here. I'm not going to go through the examples. Honestly, I think, and I've said this before, the examples, I think they make them a little bit more complicated. But look at this problem right here. It's 3 3/4 plus x equals 6. Well, what do you do to get the x by itself? You would subtract 3 3/4 on both sides of the equation, which is what they did here. They just set it up horizontally. I always prefer to do it vertically, all right? And then you're going to end up with x equals 2 1/4, all right? The try it, I already showed this to you guys. And again, it's the same thing here. 1 3/8 plus x equals 2 1/4. Well, you got to get x by itself. So you're going to have to subtract 1 3/8 on both sides of the equation. And so x equals, when you're all done, it's going to be 7/8. The try it here, number 2. Again, they give you an example that you can look at. And I've said this before a lot more in the beginning of the year, but again, if you go into the Math Google Classroom and scroll down, there's a link to every one of these lessons, and every example is a short video that you could watch that may or may not help you. But anyways, look at this here. It's 5/9 y equals 25. I'm going to write this down. 5/9 y equals 25. Okay? What's happening to the y? It's being multiplied by what? 5/9. So, opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide each side by 5/9. That cancels out. So I'm left with y equals, now I have 25, quit the crinkling over there, 25 divided by, excuse me, 5/9. So I need to turn 25 into a fraction, so that's going to be 25 over 1 being divided by 5/9 equals, okay? It's 9 over 5. I see cross canceling I can do here. 5 into 5 once. 5 goes into 25 5 times. I can't do anything with a 1 and 9. So now I just multiply straight across because we change it to multiplication. 5 times 9 is 45. 1 times 1 is 1. And 45 over 1 is 45. So it's the same thing you've been taught the last couple weeks. They're just throwing in fractions and decimals now. Molly also buys, this is the bottom of page 211, buys a bag of 8 apples for $3.60. Write and solve an equation to find how much Molly paid for each apple. So I'm just gonna put 8a equals 360. There's the equation. I'll let you guys solve it. Keep track of that decimal because we're looking to see how much she paid for each apple. All right, let's look at the try it. Under example 4, this is page 212. All right, it says, I think it says Carmen spent $12.50 for a new notebook and a compass. The notebook is $6.35. Write and solve an equation to find the cost of the compass. So let's write the equation. First off, how much did she spend total? Go ahead, somebody just say $12.50. She bought 2 items. We know the cost of one of them. What was it? $6.35. And then what we don't know is the compass. So I'll just put plus C, because whatever that cost, the two of them equal $12.50. So again, it's solved the same way. It just happens to have decimals. And this, of course, this is about money. So how would I get C by itself? Go ahead.
Minus 6.35 from both sides.
Okay. They cancel out. So C equals whatever that would end up being. I'll let you figure that one out. Okay? All right, key concept is below. And you can solve equations by using properties of equality and inverse relationship. Inverse relationships, that's just a fancy word for doing the opposite. When I ask you, what's the opposite of subtraction? It's addition. What's the opposite of division? Multiplication. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. And that's how you get the variable by itself. That's just the inverse relationships they're talking about. And so this sentence right here is your answer to number 1, which actually I think you've had to write that before in another previous lesson. So this is page 213. So number 1 is that sentence in the key concept. And these are good examples for you to look at if you want to. Number 2, showed you that one earlier. Let me get that to focus. How are we doing on time here? We're good. Why are inverse relationships important to solving equations? To isolate the variable, to get the variable by itself. And this one right here, what did we need to do? We needed to get C by itself to figure out how much C was. And so when you're solving for variables, that's what you want to do. You want to get it all by itself. So circle 1, circle 2, I gave you the answer. Circle 3 and 4 and 5, I showed you that earlier. How is solving an equation with fractions like solving an equation with whole numbers? And this is what I had you guys write down. It probably makes a little more sense now. The steps are the same. Whether it's a decimal or a fraction, you solve it the same way. Okay? And then on the right side of page 213, circle all those. I want you to solve every one of those, 6 through 13. Let's do 13 together here. 9 equals 3/8 y. So I'm just going to write that right here. 9 equals 3/8 y. What's happening to the y? Multiplied by what? What's the opposite of multiplication? So we're left with 9 divided by 3/8. I need to turn 9 into a fraction. Okay? Put 9 over 1 divided by 3/8. We did this a couple minutes ago. Keep, change, flip. 9 over 1, change it to multiplication and flip it. Now it's 8 over 3. Is there some cross canceling I can do? Sure is. 3 goes in 3 once, 3 goes in 9 3 times. 3 times 8 is what? 24. 1 times 1 is 1. So 24 equals y. That's your answer to number 13. Questions on this, anybody? Next page, page 214. I'm not worried about these boxes. If they help you, fill them out. If not, don't worry about it. But I want to know what W is, what Y is, what K is, what M is. And then circle 19 through 22. 23, it says Mr. Marlin buys these tickets for his family to visit the water park. The total cost is $210. It says write and solve an equation to find the cost of the tickets. Well, how many tickets are there? 4 tickets. So I'll just write 4 and then T for tickets equals 210. There's the equation. Now just solve it. And then you'll know how much each ticket was. 24, higher order thinking. I think I'll make this one worth a stick. All right. It says without solving, you don't have to solve it. Without solving, tell which equation below has a greater solution. In other words, the answer is larger. Which one has a larger answer? If this one, the answer was 2 and this one was 1, then this equation would have the larger answer. In fact, let's do this. Let's call this equation A, and let's call this equation B, so we know what we're all talking about. And here's what I want you guys to think about. Let me see here. How can I? Trying to think of an example I can give you. If I had the number 10 and it was being divided by 1/2, and I had the number 10 and it was being divided by 2, which one is going to have the, what do they say, greater solution? The larger solution. First off, what's 10 divided by 2 equal?
1.
What's 10 divided by 1/2 equal?
20.
Which one has the greater solution? Yeah, the first one. 20 is obviously greater than 5. So now look at 5/8 and 5/9. Which number, because they're both are going to be going into 2 3/4. Which is greater, 5/8 or 5/9? Now, there's a couple different ways you could do this. One way is if you divided 5 by 8, you're going to then get a decimal. And then you could divide 5 by 9. And again, you're going to get a decimal, and you can see which one has the larger decimal. You could draw yourself a couple lines and do 1 by 8s, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, all the way to 8/8. And then the other one by 9ths, and see which one is a little further along on the number lines.
Mr. Blazer's favorite student speaking, Harrison Proctor. How may I help?
So there's, like I said, a couple different ways. Well, there's more than those two ways to do this. 25, scratch out.
Yeah.
26. I'm waiting because somebody answered the phone and I don't want him to be distracted too much. What's going on?
So, you have to call her back after you're done with this lesson.
Okay, thank you. Circle, tell me later. 26, do 26. 27. Is the solution of b times 5/8 equals 25 greater or less than 25? So they're just asking, is the answer greater or less than 25? How can you tell before computing? I want you to be thinking about this. If I had a number, let's say I use 25. 25, if it was divided by 2, what's the answer? It's 12.5, right? 25 divided by 1, what's the answer? 25. And then 25, let's say, divided by 1/2. What's the answer? 50. When you divide a number by something less than 1, it's always going to be a larger number than what you're dividing into, because it's going to go in more times than the 1 will. The 1's going to go in exactly 25 times. And the 2 is going to go in 12.5 times. But if you divide 25 by 1/2, it's going to go in 50 times. Or if you divided 25 by 1/4 or 0.25, it's going to go in 100 times. So the smaller the fraction, the more times it would fit in that number. That's kind of what they're asking you about in here. Just be thinking about that. 28, I already showed that one to you. I kind of set it up for you. I just drew a rectangle. The area is 2 feet. One of the sides is 3/7. The other side you don't know. What's the formula to find the area of something? Area equals length times width. Well, they gave us the length. The length is 3/7. All right. So now you need to figure out what the width is. 29 and 30, circle those. 31, don't worry about it. How are we doing on time? Wow, this is a long lesson. I thought it was going to be a long lesson, but that's all right. Scratch out 31, and then the back page I've already showed you. Circle 32. Scratch out 33, do 34 and 35, 38 and 39. Real quick, 34 here. It says a fraction, f, multiplied by 5 equals 1/8. Write and solve an algebraic sentence to show the equation. Well, let's do this. A fraction f, we don't know what it is, multiplied by 5. So I'm going to do f, or I could just do 5f, okay, equals what? 1/8. Show the equation. So we've done the equation. There's different ways you could write it, but I just put 5f equals 1/8. Then solve the equation, explain how you solved it. Yeah, you don't need to explain, because if you can solve it, then that's sufficient. How would you solve this? Let me pull a stick here. Let's get some extra points on the board. Just the first step, Miss Royce. Just the very first step. That's all I'm looking for. What would you do?
You would divide 5 by 5 and then divide it.
So stop. So you would divide by 5. You would divide each side of the equation by 5. And could ask yourself, what's happening to the f? It's being multiplied by 5. Do the opposite. So you would divide each side by 5. Okay, good. 50. Let's put it up. Okay, that's it. Gosh, 25 minutes.